for Tech in Asia, Vietnam. And a bunch of us, you can see everybody from Tech in Asia is wearing a black and white shirt, or Gwen, who's wearing a red shirt.
Red one.
Who does not know what Tech in Asia is? Okay, so, oh good. All of you are virgins. So Tech in Asia is a website that covers technology and startup in Vietnam and across Asia. So our team here, we cover Vietnam, and we also do events like this. So all of our events, we try our best to support Vietnam's startup community. So hopefully, we'll learn a lot today. We'll also get to learn about what's the potential in Vietnam startup world, and I don't know, other stuff too. And hopefully you guys can meet each other also. I want to ask how many people understand English? How many people do not understand English? Có nhiều người không hiểu tiếng Anh. Ngoài Minh, besides me. Okay, everybody understands? So today everything's in English. Today we have no subtitles, no translation. So you have to practice your English today. Our guests are also speaking English. So Gwen will do a little fireside chat for how long? 30 minutes, okay. And then we'll have 6 startups. 6 startups that will present, okay? 6. How many startups did we receive?
We had we had 32 applicants.
32 startups applied. So we had to kill
a lot.
25, 26.
So at first we were only supposed to have 5 startups, but they were really good ones, so we decided to have 6.
So I'm very excited about the startups. Some of the startups maybe you know already. That's okay, and some of them I hope you didn't know. And you will be so surprised. Oh my God, Vietnam can do it? Yes, I feel so happy Vietnam can do it. So, okay, so let's just get started. Gwen, I'll let you introduce some stuff. Please, you introduce.
Okay, thank you so much, Minh. So I would like to bring up our special guest today, Kuo Yi here. Clap, please. Kuo Yi is the Managing Director of Monks Hill Ventures. Please up on stage. He's in the middle. Yeah, and next is Chia Chuang. Clap, clap, clap. From Digital Media Partners. So thank you both for coming.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So before we start off everything, I just wanted to kind of talk about why we are having this fireside chat. We all know that Southeast Asia is a huge region. It's a population with 600 million people, but at the same time it is also fragmented by different countries, different markets and different languages. But both of you, VC firms, have been in Southeast Asia. You have operated companies and invested in Southeast Asia. So that's why it will be really great to hear from both of you. But before we go into that, I just want to kind of just briefly introduce both of your firms, and then we'll go into like a personal introduction. So Monks Hill, for those of you who have read our marketing blog post, Monks Hill is a new fund. It is currently $80 million. It is targeted at technology startups from Southeast Asia, as well as companies expanding into Southeast Asia. So if you're one of these, you can pitch to Monks Hill Ventures for potential investment. They invest at 1 to 5 million per deal, and they are new, but they're really experienced, made up of entrepreneurs who have been behind Match.com, Interwoven, Bubbly, Infocom Investments, Accentuate, all acquired by companies. And next, Digital Media Partners has 20 million US dollars under management, has been around and investing in Southeast Asia for quite a while, including Namwa, Chongmwa and Namwa, right? Thanks. My pronunciation is not very good, sorry. And 2C2P, Ad Central, Make Me, for example. And you invest between $500,000 to 1 million per deal, but there's also opportunities for follow-up investment of 3 million, for double down, right? So yeah, so that's the two funds. And so through these chats, I really want to learn from their experiences, their investing experiences, and to talk about, for a Southeast Asian company or a Vietnamese company, how should you think about regionalizing, globalizing, building and scaling your company, and maybe when you should not regionalize or go global. So we're hoping that through this 20-30 minutes, we'll tease out some tips from them. And at the end of it, we'll have 10 minutes of questions from the floor. So if anything at the top of your mind, be prepared. You can ask our panel here. So later on, there will be pitching, again by like 6 companies. So these will be our judges for later. Yeah? Okay. So first, Kuo Yi, you're visiting Vietnam this time.
Yep.
2 days in Ho Chi Minh City and 2 days in Hanoi.
That's correct.
Yeah. So why Vietnam? Why come here this trip?
Well, it's working.
Oh yeah.
So it's really because I don't know a lot about Vietnam, to be very honest, which is why this is a really discovery trip for myself, a learning trip. And I've seen quite a bit in the last couple of days, thanks to the help of ladies around here, folks from DNP and Tech in Asia. So I'm just beginning to scratch the surface. I realize it's a very big country. It's a lot of things happening here. So I'm just here to learn, really.
And your experiences in the past in Monk Hill, yeah.
So I'm one of the founding partners at Monk Hill Ventures. As Gwen mentioned, we're a Series A tech fund focused on Southeast Asian startups. Previously, I was the CEO of Infocom Investments, which invested into various growth stage startups across the region as well as the US. So some of the companies that we invested in include Twilio, DataZoo, Gango, etc., Rebans in Singapore. Prior to that, I was a early employee and founders of various startups in Boston, San Francisco, and Singapore. Engineer by training many years ago. So that's me.
Yeah, Chishma?
I'm also an engineer by training. At some point in my career, also worked at Infocom Investments. So I'm actually Malaysian by birth. I went to Singapore to study. Then somehow I ended up working for the Economic Development Board of Singapore, specifically in a unit that was working at technopreneurship and venture capital. So I was doing a lot of policy and planning about how to build a startup ecosystem in Singapore many years ago. So that involves dealing with figuring out who are the angel investors, will they invest in IT or tech companies, policy about co-investment, etc. Then I move on to Infocom Investment, where we do growth stage financing for IT-related, software-related companies, like I mentioned, in Singapore as well as US and Europe. Then I actually left to join an Indonesian family for almost 2 years, where they are building out their internet-related investment. So that was actually quite eye-opening for me, because Jakarta is actually very similar to Ho Chi Minh in some ways, and you really see the emerging market coming up. And then I went to join Digital Media Partners.
So let's come off that point where you talk about the markets, and you mentioned that Ho Chi Minh City and Jakarta is similar in some ways. So from all your experiences, from your portfolio companies, can you just give us an overview of the similarities and differences in the region, like comparing the emerging markets?
I think like these days we are all like very globalized, right? And everybody actually has similar aspiration in terms of material needs, right? And but of course the development is also sort of or what we can afford it depends on our spending power. So I think the mistake that people make, for example, when they look at Indonesia, they will tell me that, yeah, I know we're going to do this, and they just generalize the whole Indonesia, 250 million people, they are all like that. But actually how you should look at it is maybe top 50 million, they have different kind of spending power, different business models going to work for these people. the next 100 million and the bottom 100 million, they will all behave differently. So the top 50 million will probably behave similar to people who live in Ho Chi Minh, or like the top 10 million in Manila or Klang Valley, they will all have similar behavior. And like, you know, the middle tier will have similar behavior across Southeast Asia, and the bottom tier will behave, maybe they are all on mobile the cheap handset feature phones, yeah, for example.
So in my mind, in some of the observations that we've had in Southeast Asia in the last couple of years, was really there are at least about 3 models in which how a company can become big out of Southeast Asia. So the very obvious one is you're solving a global problem, right? So for example, a company like Vicky out of Singapore, they built a platform for language translation on a video platform. And that's not a very specific Southeast Asian problem, it's a global problem, right? For any language parents, you want to watch a Korean drama, you want to watch it in, and you are Croatian, you want to be able to understand Croatian. So that is a global platform that allows people to do that no matter where you are. And for that to be built of Singapore, it's really incidental, right? It could be from anywhere. So that's one category. The second category is really around solving a Southeast Asian infrastructural issue, payment, bandwidth, etc. And if you look at a company called Garena, for example, Garena is a publishing platform for games, and the main initial problem they're trying to solve was a really poor bandwidth in all the countries in Southeast Asia. And they built a client software that you install onto your PC that allows you to have built sort of experience when you play multi-user game. And because of that client that's installed on all the PCs and more than 20 million users in Southeast Asia, it became the de facto platform for publishing games. So that's solving an infrastructural issue that's very common across Southeast Asia. The third one that we see, for example, is one where, like Chia Suang mentioned, you target a very specific segment of the market that is quite common across Southeast Asia. For e-commerce in particular, I think it's really coming down to not a country strategy, but more of a city-level strategy. A company like Reebonz, for example, they are looking at a very specific group of demographic guys who can afford to pay and spend on expensive luxury goods and aspire to own a Gucci bag, for example. And that segment, if you were to aggregate that group of people in the different cities in Southeast Asia, our estimate is about 60 million of these people in Southeast Asia. 60 million people who are willing to spend about $3,000 a month on the average, or maybe less than that, but my point is, 4 figures on luxury goods online. Okay, 60 million, by the way, is about the population of Germany in that segment too. So it's not, it's not insignificant.
So when companies here in Vietnam, for example, when they are kind of thinking about going global and looking at the region as a potential expansion market, how should they think about looking at these markets? So specifically, you mentioned about variables, they picking out these 60 million people who can pay, upwards of $3,000 or about $3,000. But how else? What kind of framework should they apply to choosing markets and industries?
Maybe like focusing on certain common needs, like what Koi mentioned. So for DMP, we focus a lot on, I guess, Koi's second model, where you're solving emerging market needs. And actually, in Southeast Asia, we are actually quite lucky because we have some emerging markets that are a little bit ahead of us: Russia, Turkey, China, India, slightly ahead of us in certain ways in solving problems. So we should actually, at least at DMP, we actually study this market quite closely to sort of pick up what works there, and then start thinking about, maybe it will work in Southeast Asia, and start hunting for the right team to do this. And of course, I guess we are still ahead of other market like Latin America, Africa, or whatever. So maybe if things work really well, then you can expand to other emerging markets. But yeah.
So this is a little bit like crystal ball gazing, looking at the markets that are ahead.
A little bit, but at least it serves as some guidelines, I think. But then you can see it, like, for example, for e-commerce to take off, one of the problems that is quite common across Southeast Asia is actually payment. And you realize that people are not really comfortable putting in credit card, or they don't even own a credit card. So they want to do bank transfer, they want to do over-the-counter payment. So we did find one of our investment in Thailand, and we realized that it actually applies in Indonesia, and as well as in Philippines. So it's about solving one common need and trying to bring it across.
Is there a name to this company?
Not to C2P. Yeah.
Payments, right? Okay.
Or like food delivery, what we realize is when we look really deep in food delivery companies, maybe I think Vietnam is a special market, but most of the restaurants around Southeast Asia, or at least from what we've covered, Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, they really don't want to do their own delivery, which is different. Like in Europe, the restaurant seems to like to do their own delivery. Maybe they have spare capacity, spare waiter to send out. So what the market looks for is a pure online aggregator. But in Southeast Asia, we learned the hard way that you actually have to provide a full service. So you need to build a logistic backend as well.
Jumping in here and kind of providing a contrary viewpoint, how about companies who just want to stay local and target a market of 250 million people in Indonesia, or target a 92 million population here in Vietnam?
So there are a couple of perspectives here. As an investor, I look for a company that can become big quick. From an investor perspective, we need to be convinced that if you plan to stay local, there is a trajectory that can get you from, say, 0 to 50 to 100 mil top line revenue, depending on what business you're in, right, in 4 to 5 years, regardless of the population, right? So obviously, if you have a big population, it becomes easier if you are in the e-commerce and the consumer space. So that's what we look for. Now, having said that, if you are a business, you want to be able to grow, you want to be able to hire people, pay yourself, generate a nice profit, you could stay local. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to grow big and grow fast, which is, I think, what we all in this room want to be a part of or be leading, then you need to think hard about whether that one local market is sufficient. The reality for Southeast Asia is the 250 million in Indonesia, I think, is kind of a misleading number because it's really stratified. It's a very complicated 250, right? You can break it down to a lot of pieces, and at the end of the day, you may not even come up with 20 million, depending on what your product is and what your target audience is. My preference, and when I talk to companies, the one thing that I really look at, and talk to startup founders about is bring a very analytical and a very data-driven mindset. Do not be afraid to go on the ground, talk to people, get data, understand what's happening on the ground, and pull the data together. I think data has to be the guiding factor for deciding how and when you want to cross to a different market or a different geography, number one. Number two, I really believe in the whole idea of a playbook, right? It means when you are in one market, you really suss out and understand all the issues to win in one market, and learn and be able to pull out the commonality, the key areas you can be really, really good at, and be able to repeat that, because that's going to be a core asset and core strength in different markets. But be clear that in that playbook, there's going to be 2 or 3 chapters that's about local conditions. But you need to have a playbook. You need to be able to articulate, we are very, very good in 3 things, and this is what the 3 things we are going to do repeatedly in all the markets. And then these are the 4 things that we need to be able to do very well depending on local conditions. If you aren't able to articulate that, I don't think you're ready to go to a different market, is my perspective.
So in terms of this playbook, when constructing it, imagine now the companies have built a playbook, and they're thinking, okay, let me go to a different market now, and they've pinpointed the 3-4 points they need to figure out in the market. So how long should a typical market assessment period take?
Well, I think that's a tricky question. It's very much dependent on the team, right? Correct? And how fast they learn in their market, how fast they learn about other markets as well. So I think one of the points to decide whether you're ready or not is, firstly, you must remember that you need to have significant resources when you want to expand. So you better be good at your own market. You need to be able to have good people so that when, say, the entrepreneur we work with start traveling and start going and looking at the next market, things don't collapse at home. So I think hiring talent is very, very, very important.
How about local partners?
I think this one goes back to understanding your own company and your own industry. So before you go into any market, I think you should really do a thorough competitive understanding of the competitive landscape. How does it look like? Is there like big traditional players dominating the market? Can you partner with them versus does it make sense to partner with them versus trying to go in and fight with them? Are there like small players all at very early stage, and you stand a fair chance if you use all the stuff from your plate?
So yeah, I think we're talking at a pretty high level of generality here. I think it's helpful to kind of go down to one specific, say, vertical. I'm going to guess that most of the folks here, if you are in a startup or think about doing a startup, are focused on consumers, B2C.
Who's focused on
How many
consumers?
B2C startup folks are there here? B2C, consumers.
Consumers. Your business targets consumers.
How many of you are selling to businesses? Oh, wow. Okay. Good spread. Okay.
And the rest, there are many hands that are not up. Are you developers? Who's that developer? Okay. You designer? Oh, 1 hand, 2 hands. Oh, 5. Okay, 5 designers. Not bad. Okay.
So I think if I were to pick an example from the consumer kind of facing play, the key things that one example for to consider would be the customer acquisition cost in each of the market, right? And depending on what your product is, what is the customer acquisition cost and what is the customer lifetime value, and via a direct acquisition and via a channel acquisition, right? What would those look like, right? So there's a trade-off to be considered here, and the speed to execution. If you are a B2B player, you're selling to customers, right? Then the distribution model is very important. If you're selling to banks, for example, well, what is the fastest way to get to the key decision maker is critical. In most Southeast Asian markets, there aren't a lot of banks in each market, right? 3, 5, 6, maybe. And so finding the right channel and the quickest way to get to the banks is ultimately the goal. If it's through a channel or it's through direct, there should be an assessment on how fast you can get there and what is the trade-off of getting there. So again, I think ultimately it comes down to a very specific situation. I hate to be able to point to a magic kind of answer.
If it was that easy, everyone would be doing it, right?
That's right. That's right.
So now moving on. So in terms of companies, again, you've worked in as a founder, early employee, and also your portfolio companies. What are common mistakes you see that just companies in general do? Because now we're shifting a little bit more from an investment point of view, because I think a lot of these companies here are also raising funds.
Not hiring fast enough and not paying attention to talent. That's what I think.
So when you say paying attention to talent, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I mean, at the early stage, maybe because you can't afford to pay good salary, or you can't somehow have a big enough vision to sell and get good people, then you might script a little bit and just get the best as of what little money you have to and can hire. But as you grow, you actually need to especially when you have raised funds, for example, I think you really need to hire like good enough people. I think like maybe, you know, for example, in Myanmar, I think like one of the mistakes that the founder made was he was running a 900 strong company with 2 or 3 senior people. And it's good that now they have a whole new management, and it has gone so much better just because they have put the right talent in place. Yeah.
So from my experience, the most common failure mode for a startup is people and team, and the lack of ability to scale that. I think in the Asian context, it's a lot more acute, just because it's hard to find very good co-founders, right? So it's not unusual for a company to have 1 or 2 co-founders, or even just a single founder. And when you're going from a, you know, kind of like a 10-man company to a 50-man company to a 100-man company, decisions need to be devolved, meaning it needs to be spread out to different people. And I think Asians in particular, and this is my experience, I could be just, you know, being stereotypical here, have a hard time letting go. And you have to realize that when you go to 100 people, you can't have one guy making all the decisions. Things just don't happen as quickly as it should be. So I think that's one of the key critical inflection point that startups need to be able to get over with. Hire people you can trust and spread the responsibility and trust people to be able to do the right thing for you. Now, to be able to do that, you really need to be able to build a culture of trust, right? You need to be able to build a pretty open culture, and I don't think that's necessarily an Asian instinct to be very open, to sort of share every good and bad details of a company. But to be able to make decisions at the ground level, you need to have that sort of open culture. So I think in the Asian context, I think I've seen that to be one of the key challenge. May not necessarily be a failure issue, but it's a scaling issue, right? Companies aren't able to scale because they're not being able to get enough people that they can trust and open up the company.
Okay, so at this point, I want to let the audience know that you can ask questions. I'll ask one more question, and okay, wait, who has the question first? Okay, oh good, oh Carrie, oh you're up here, then yeah, go ahead, ask, he's right in front.
Well,
do you mind standing up, Carrie? Thank you.
okay, first out of the gate. Several years ago, in one of our companies in Japan, we had $1 million investments from Masayoshi Son, from SoftBank, and then Hiroshi Mikitani from Rakuten. Their evaluation of a company's potential growth was whether it could grow 10 times the investment. So they each put $1 million into a company expecting it to grow to 20 million. I'm very curious that you say $100 million is what you're looking for in terms of a growth. And I wonder if you can name me right now, off the top of your head, 5 companies that you're investing in that can grow to 100 million, that can grow to the 100 million. And I'm not talking Hong Kong dollars. I'm talking USD. Because I think, you know, based upon what I see in Asia, it's very hard for any of the tech startup companies, unless they're hardware-based, to grow to that 100 million mark that you're talking about. But I see a lot of companies that can grow to a 10 million, 20 million mark, and if their profitability ratios are good, 40% or so, still create a very good valuation for investors.
So I'll give you one example that I'm very familiar with. So let me back up. So when I first made that statement about being able to scale from 0 to 10 to 50, I think it's just being able to anticipate and see how you can potentially get there, number one. So let me give you a more concrete example. A company that I'm pretty close to, Ribbons, right? They are e-commerce flash sales site. They sell luxury goods online at a discount. When I first met Sam Lim, who's the founder, about 4 years ago, the company was barely breaking 5 million in top line. Right, they're selling stuff online, you know, and all of that. I had coffee with him, doubling up as a warehouse, literally racks with all the luxury goods sitting in there at the same time. And I've been trying to invest in the company every year since then without much success.
4 years later, when I finally managed to invest in the company, the top line was about 100 mil US. Margin was about 35% to 40%. Right. Now, you can argue that it's an e-commerce play, you know, and the comp at that point was about 2x to 3x, depending on which market you look at and which comp you look at. Comp is comparables. Sorry, it's a jargon. It means that you look at a comparable company in a different market, and you take the top line, for example, the revenue, and you try to see what the valuation would look like. And if you were to take a comp of Guild or a different company in China, for example, 1 to 2x at the top line at about 30%, 40% margin, the company was worth about 250. And that was about a year and a half ago, right? And where were they geographically? They were in Singapore, Jakarta, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Hong Kong, Manila, Australia. So they were able to replicate that strategy. Now, do I have 5 examples? Not off the top. I think Garena would be up there as well. Garena is probably worth closer to about half a B right now. They are very, very profitable. But I think what that means is it really means it is possible, guys, to build reasonably big companies in Southeast Asia. And I'm hopeful. That's the reason why we started the fund. Just so you understand, when we started a fund, it's a 10-year commitment, right? And Kerry is nodding his head, you know, you've been through that. When I start a fund today, I'm telling my investors that give me money, please. Give me $80 million, and I'm going to run this organization in the next 10 years to make money for you. I'm in my 40s, right? I'm going to commit the next 10 years of my life to do this. So I better be pretty bullish about the market I'm going into. So we are bullish. We are bullish in the next 5 years. There's a good chance we'll see at least 5 to 10 startups in Southeast Asia that can hit 250 to 500 in valuation. That's our bet.
Well, in Vietnam, we have VNG, and I cannot pronounce that company that's going IPO. Yeah, sorry.
Already okay.
Oh, I already have it? Okay. And questions? More questions? Anything from floor? No? One last chance. No? Yes? Okay. Oh wait, one more in front, Min.
Okay. Can I ask you, Mr. Lim, how many startups have you invested so far, and what is the percentage of successful? And about the failure, are there any special reasons that they fail? So you understand my question?
So let me repeat the question and make sure I understand it. The first question is how many startups have I invested in and how many were successful?
Successful, okay.
Yeah. And the second question was?
Was there any reason they failed?
They failed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, plenty. It's a mark of a VC to fail a lot. So Monk Ventures is a new fund. We are about to start investing in about a month's time. So in that particular fund, we don't have any portfolio yet. In my previous fund, Infocom Investments, I invested into about 13 to 14 different startups. So perhaps the most successful one is a company called Twilio. Twilio is a cloud-based telephony API company based in San Francisco. When we first invested, the revenue was already about 25 to 30 million. A year later, it was about 70. A year later, it was about 140 in revenue, and that was about 2 or 3 years ago. Our investment after 1 year, multiplied 5 times. After 2 years, multiplied about 15 times. So I think that's a pretty good return. And most VCs would just stop there and say we made money, we're pretty happy. So we are pretty happy. Now, failures, there were quite a few. We invested in the companies that was a bit too early in terms of the maturity of the team. And I go back to the original point. I think the key failure mode has always been the team. The team blew up. The people didn't have the stamina to see through the bad days. And trust me, in the 14 companies, most of them will see a lot of bad, difficult days. And the reality is the human nature sometimes just doesn't hold up, and they are not able to see it through, and that happens. Right? We're dealing with human beings here. So a couple of companies, the founders were just not able to see it through.
Okay,
Does that answer the question? Okay, great. Thanks.
thank you. Oh, Huang here has a question.
Quang.
Sorry.
Whether you have read a recent article, I think in Tech Asia or some other tech website, saying that in the coming years, there will be a lot of investment to Southeast Asia, upward of $1 billion US. That will go to mainly to Indonesia and Singapore. And Vietnam, unfortunately, was ranked very low in that list of Southeast Asian countries, even below Myanmar. Could you offer some reason why that is the case and what we can do to change that perspective from investors?
So I'll repeat the question a little bit because I think the mic is not fantastic. So the question was, and I'll repeat it and let me know whether I'm correct, which is that, so there was an article that Tech in Asia we put up that said that over the next 5 years, next 2 years, there'll be $1 billion invested into Southeast Asia. And there was a ranking of countries into which countries were having more investment, and Vietnam was ranked very low, even lower than Myanmar. So Huang's question is to the panelists here is why? So yeah, so Chia Chuang, you've been investing in Vietnam. Perhaps some thoughts as well from both perspectives.
For us, I think back to what we mentioned before, we are looking for people who can solve come up with solutions for the emerging market. So for us, it could be a team in Vietnam or a team in Indonesia or a team in Malaysia or Thailand. We have not yet invested in Myanmar, so actually I'm not part of the Tech-Asia survey or whatever, so for us it's equal chance whether you're Vietnam or Indonesia. So
Is this general investments or just venture investments?
Venture, right?
$1 billion in venture investment in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, it sounds a bit big as well to me.
I'm gonna guess that actually includes private equity, infrastructural investments as well. I think probably because Myanmar is opening up, so a lot of investments go in there. Yeah, that would make sense. Indonesia has always attracted a lot of foreign direct investments just because it's attractive, it's big, it's perceived as up and coming.
150 million people.
But I don't have any specific comment about why not Vietnam. Again, I don't know enough. I'll be the first one to admit, so I'll defer to the experts.
I mean, for us, it's really, we don't have preference for whether it's Vietnamese team or Indonesian team.
Can I jump in here? So Tech in Asia, we have also invested, in a sense, into Vietnam. Minh here, has been writing about startups, about all of you for the last year and a half. Yay! Right? And we do have a large team of 12 here. And for us, our company, we have 60 over people, almost 70. And in Vietnam, we have been investing because we know that there are good companies out there. That's why they're pitching also later. And we're bullish about Vietnam. So, yeah.
I think in fact, Vietnam does stand out when it comes to things like, say, mobile apps. I think I've seen quite a couple of good ones coming out from Vietnam. Mobile gaming related, I think Vietnam has shown some good startups compared to other parts of Southeast Asia. So not all is that bleak. Please don't feel depressed.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh wow, 2 hands. Wow, cool. This side and that side.
Given that you're putting substantial amount of money into Vietnam, I'm curious about how you deal with what I see as a real idiosyncrasy of the investment here. The government plays a fairly substantial regulatory role in many of the sectors in the economy. And so that makes, I think, the management of money and actually just making an investment a little bit idiosyncratic too, since you have to deal with the regulatory environment. I know when maybe 10, 12 years ago when Mark Merbius was in Vietnam, he had a very big fund that he was actually was a substantial amount of interest in, and it stayed primarily in cash because he had a hard time finding a way to get around the regulation. I'm curious as to what you think are the promising sectors and how big you think they are within the Vietnamese market. Maybe just the top 3 in your mind and how big they are in terms of total dollars.
I'm new to Vietnam. I'm really just beginning to understand right now, but I would say that one thing that struck me just over the last couple of days, and the realization is, looking at the 6 major economies in ASEAN, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. Vietnam is the country with the most recent history of a centrally managed economy, a very strong, obviously communist system. So among the 6 economies, the other 5 economies have been open for a long, long time. So you're absolutely right in that the government and its regulation and its policy has quite a bit of impact, I think, in terms of how investments is being done and what companies, businesses in Vietnam are able to do in spite of the government. My gut feel, again, based on very few data points, is things which are over the top on the mobile platform. I mean, content and games is obviously a very successful sector, I think, in Vietnam right now, just because I don't think the government gets into a lot of way of people having fun on mobile platform. So I think some over-the-top stuff in Vietnam could be attractive. But that's just a hypothesis right now.
I think like the other thing to think about regulatory issues is not limited to Vietnam. Actually, Indonesia also have their own limitation. I think they have a special list of what foreigners can and cannot invest, for example. And I think if you dig deep enough, you'll find similar things in other Southeast Asian countries. But hopefully, ASEAN will change over time. Like next year, they have a free trade coming up. So I think if you're patient enough, things will slowly improve over the next couple of years.
One last question. Yeah.
As I understand that you're investing in running startup or looking for running startup, right? Have you ever invested in startup at the day one, or have you invested in idea of people?
So I'll speak for Bangsil Ventures, and I think Chie Suong can speak for DMP. We are a Series A investor. What that means is we don't invest at a seed stage. We look for companies that have gotten what we call market engagement already, meaning they have a product, they've gone and engaged the market, and they've gotten some numbers and feedback from the market. And that's what we look for, where we think is the right time to look at a company to invest in. There are other players, aside from us, who are earlier stage investor, angel investors, for example, that will invest in a team and an idea.
For digital media partners, we also don't invest in just ideas and people. We actually look for market traction to see that the model is scalable. But personally, in my previous investment job, I have definitely done a lot of investment in idea and people. Failure rate is much higher, and a lot of hand-holding that's needed. So, but if you're at that stage, I would suggest that you look for like a good angel who can mentor you, or an incubator, actually.
Can I jump in here? Okay. So I think in Vietnam there are quite a few incubators. I'm not super familiar with everyone, but there's Founder Institute, Five Desire, yes? What else? Pagia? What?
Silicon Valley.
Oh, Silicon Valley, yeah. So it's a government-related project, right? They're investing. So yeah, so there's quite a few avenues. And taking a step back, I actually used to run a fund as well. I used to invest. And that was a seed fund. There was a time where we met 3 guys. First meeting, within half an hour, we shook hands, we agreed on valuation, shook hands, and we invested. But that was US dollars, $40,000. So I think it really depends on the fund and what they're looking out for. So there are avenues to get investment just on a mere idea and mere team. Just have to look for the right people. Yeah. Okay, one more question, yeah.
Thank you for me asking the question. Just wondering, for the venture capital guys, you guys, how do you evaluate the company? Is this like what kind of specific ratio methodology? And one question for Tech in Asia is that is that so? Out of 6 companies here, how many you have invested in? Oh no, okay. So I think
I will clarify.
okay.
Would you not invest?
So when we look at a company, we're very clear as a Series A fund, what we are prepared to take is some level of product risk, some level of people risk, and quite a bit of market risk. What does that mean? It means that we don't need to see a lot of revenue. We want to see some revenue, but most importantly, we want to understand how the team has thought and understood about the market, and where in the process of the learning about the market they are at. If it is too early, we say, look, go learn more about the market first, and let's talk some more. Because that for us is really a continuous process of learning, and that also determines the valuation of the company.
It's similar in the sense like the importance of a team understanding and learning about the market. So for example, if you're e-commerce, we want to understand your thinking about how you acquire customers. Are you like tracking the right matrices? Are you like thinking, are you getting the right, going into the right marketing channel? Or are you just blindly spending money on Google AdWords or whatever? That's just for example. So of course, I think the other thing is like the market potential. So for example, we see that you solve some solution that's specific to Vietnam, so maybe payment or whatever. Is it applicable to other Southeast Asia markets? Can we bring you to the other markets? I mean, that is from BMP's perspective. And of course, quality of the team is very important. Is it just a 2-person founder, or like can this team build on? Is it a good team?
So one of the things I ask the founders and the team a lot, especially if you're a B2B company, is one thing. So let me back up. If you are a SaaS company, and increasingly there's what we call the consumerization of enterprise, where you sell software through the, a website. Even for enterprise software, you sign up for an account, you use it, you try, you pay for it. There's no longer a long-drawn sales process, right? In that scenario, the one question I always ask a founding team is, if you use search engine optimization and search engine marketing to drive traffic to your site and your product, what is that one keyword that you want to own in a search engine in Google, right? A lot of startups are not able to articulate what is that 2 words they want to be able to describe is the value proposition of their product that they want to absolutely, when I type in those 2 words in Google, your name come out first. If you're not able to define what those 2 words are, you do not know what your company is supposed to be doing, or what it's good at, or what value proposition it has, or what problem it's trying to solve for the end user. The flip side also is, if I were to type in a problem that I want to solve, does your name come out first? And what would that problem be? If you're not able to articulate what that is, then you are too early. Right. So I hope that point is clear. Again, it's the whole idea about being able to articulate your value proposition very succinctly in 1 or 2 words, right, through the process of knowing what you really need to stand out for.
So I'll quickly clarify your question.
I'll quickly clarify your question. So Tech in Asia, we do not invest. Do not. Yeah. That was me personally in the past tense. Yeah. So we do not. We are just pure media, so we have no affiliations, we have no equity stake in all the companies. Yeah.
You have no money, basically.
So one last question, very quickly. You know, in investments, it's always about fit between startups and investors. So investors choose startups, but startups also choose investors. So why should startups pick you as an investor?
We have 9 portfolios to date, and I suppose we ask our entrepreneurs sometimes why did they choose to work with us. Well, some of them say they got recommended by people, that's why they come and talk to us. So I think this is not a question we should answer, but perhaps if you're interested to work with DMP, can try to talk to other people or other entrepreneurs that have worked with us before. I think they will give you a better answer than we can. Yeah.
So our tagline amongst your ventures is entrepreneurs backing entrepreneurs. I think what we bring to the table is really having the experience of growing company from zero, and in my partner's case, to IPO on NASDAQ, building a $1 billion company. So it's really having gone through the process of seeing what it takes to grow a company that we want to be able to bring to the table. It's how we think about how we are different in this market.
Okay, thank you so much to both of you. Yay, thank you.